Else why work so hard for so little? We made part of our living selling vegetables and fruit out of our truck in the neighborhoods. And when we weren't doing that, we sold crabs and did yard work for the people who had those big old homes down by the beach. And Mama and me and sometimes Maisel cleaned up the condos and offices at night. Mama did day work, too, for people, but I didn't. I liked crabbing and selling vegetables the best, but it looked like the vegetables weren't going to make anyone jump up today. We rattled across the wood bridge spanning the 15th Street drainage ditch and turned into Cypress Swamp Road. Hattie and Maisel were having a potato fight, throwing the smaller potatoes at each other. It was that slow today. Where were the customers? Not even old Mrs. Alston had bought. It must have been too hot for folks to even come outside to look at what we had to sell. Just too hot. It got so hot here that the heat hurt your feelings. It was better to be down on the boardwalk with that ocean breeze cooling you off all over. I wished I could go down there right this minute, or maybe this afternoon. No, the Summer Games Carnival was going to be held over at the old school this afternoon, and I had told Maisel and Hat that I'd go with them. It wasn't a big deal for me, but it was for them, of course. I wouldn't even have minded going up to Atlantic Beach, South Carolina. That was an itsy-bitsy resort run by black folks, with a black mayor and everything. It was fun to go up there, but I didn't get to go very often because it was quite a few miles away. We went to their Memorial Day festival, though. When Daddy crossed onto Strom-Thurmond Highway, I knew that he had called it quits and was headed for home. We bumped past the old, new Africa No. 1 Missionary Baptist Church, standing half up and half down at the side of the road. That's how it looked to me. The back section of the roof was slanted down on the ground, but the front section was still attached to the second story. That had been our family's regular church until our new one was built farther down the highway. I knew all about dates and the history of our church because I loved history. I'd rather find out about history than do anything else. That old church was built back in 1898. It's set up on cement blocks so you could see from one side under it to the other. Close by the church was the old cemetery, weedy and scraggly as usual. Hardly anybody was buried in it anymore, not since they started burying at the cemetery over in Deacon's Neck 10 or 15 years ago. I'd wondered about the people buried in that old cemetery, but nobody seemed to know anything about them. At least nobody was talking to me about it. I asked Daddy once, "Who's buried in there?" And do you know what he said? He said, "Dead people." In fact, hardly anybody had anything much good to say about anybody else around here. That's how it seemed to me. Unless it was gossip, of course. And when we read about people doing stuff in history class, it was always about white people when it came to Calvary County. Which was okay, but nobody ever mentioned anybody black. And when I asked Miss Gore, my teacher, how come we never studied about anybody black who did stuff around here, she said nobody black around here had ever done anything good worth talking about. I liked heroes. And I liked to feel good about what people did back in the old days because it helped me go ahead and feel good about now. But lots of times the kids made fun of me because I talked about heroes like Harriet Tubman and Sojourner Truth. Some of the kids didn't even know who they were, and they were real famous. Bunny and Sin Sin, my two best friends, said that was old-timey stuff, and what about Michael Jackson and Prince, who were super fine for true, but that wasn't the same thing. Just then, a woman driving an old rusty Cadillac in the next lane over barreled ahead and spewed strong blue oily smoke all over us. "That car ought to go to the junkyard," I coughed. "Wasn't that Miss Effie?" About time for her to ask us to do some more work for her, too. "I don't want to work today," Maisel said.